one. Say and spell your first and last names for me.
Lindsay Ashford, Lindsay Ashford.
And where do you call home? Do you have a home these days, or?
The closest to home I've got is Prague. That's where I spent the most time and most friends.
How have you wound up just traveling from place to place the past 2 years? You've been south of France, you've been through Latin America, at least 3 countries in the past 2 months. How did you get to that point?
I've always had the wanderlust. I love to travel, see new people, new cultures, new food. And now I've got the opportunity to travel a bit, so taking advantage of it.
You said earlier you were in Palo Alto just last winter, but you hated it. What don't you like about living in the States?
Nearly everything. The commercialism, the inability to escape all the advertising, the mentality of the people, the huge tanks that people drive around on the streets. It just seems like a very wasteful society to me.
Do you have any problems with the way the American society views a self-described pedophile?
That's universal, so I don't hold anything against America per se just because of that, because I'll experience the same thing in France, Germany, Great Britain, wherever else.
What have you experienced? And do you make it known publicly that you are a pedophile when you go to these various places?
I don't wear a sign around, but when I get to know people, I reveal myself to them.
And how are you accepted when you reveal yourself as a pedophile?
Most of the time, people are tolerant, curious. They ask lots of questions. Very rarely have I been categorically rejected because of it.
And it's your goal to, convince people that it's okay for someone to be a pedophile as long as they're not acting on it in a criminal way?
That's the immediate goal. One is to show the world that there's a big difference between the child molester stereotype, which people assume is what a pedophile is, and those of us who have chosen not to break the law and chosen not to abuse.
Have you been able to convince anybody over to your side?
I think that some people have certainly been convinced. In other cases, I've planted the seed. I may not have achieved an outright victory, but it's certainly given people something to think about.
The biggest problem I see you up against is the fact that basically every state in the U.S. and every nation in the world has an age of consent law.
That's correct.
It hangs around 16 in the States. Mexico, it's 12. It's 14 here in Colombia. Do you see you as a self-styled leader of a movement to legitimize pedophilia, that you'll have any impact on being able to change age of consent laws?
Well, I first start out by saying I'm not a leader of anything. I certainly have a visible presence, but I'm not leading anybody at all.
You're very vocal.
I am very vocal, yes.
And in the community, you're probably one of the most well-known individuals.
Yes.
And because of that, you're out in front, and some people would see you as a leader. You read your entry on Wikipedia, and you see Lindsay Ashford is a leader of a movement, and that's where I get that from. And people in the movement consider you a leader, based off the descriptions I read about you from Wikipedia, at least.
Right.
In that position, do you think you'll have any success in getting governments to reconsider age of consent laws?
It's hard to say. I mean, there's 2 issues. There's one, the legal issue, that there is an age of consent at all. And the second issue, which is probably more important, is whether society views relationships between adults and minors. And in order to effect any kind of change like this, we need to indicate to society that, one, young people are able to make decisions for themselves, and that the laws do not actually prevent any abuse. People who are going to coerce or manipulate young people are going to do it regardless of what the age of consent is.
What do you mean young people are able to make decisions for themselves?
I mean that...
In terms of a sexual relationship?
Absolutely.
How young?
Well, it really depends on what the activity is. I use young people to refer to essentially adolescents, so post-pubescent. I think that they're full well capable of making decisions for themselves, full well of the critical thinking capacities that would enable them to do so. The reason that they perhaps are not doing so now, or not able to do so, is because information has been withheld from them. They're taught, if anything, to abstain or given very little information. Parents are often loath to speak about it to them. And so what information they're getting is from less than reliable sources, the mass media, their peers, or other sources like that.
Well, some of the sources people get this information from is from churches, from their religious leaders, that, you know, sex is something that should be saved until marriage.
I would say that the religious groups are not providing objective information. They're providing extremely subjective and biased information based upon their dogma. And I think that's really dangerous, because if you're raised in an environment like that and you're actually kept in the dark about a lot of things, you're not given all of the information needed to make a good decision, then your decision-making process has been hampered.
What information does a young person need to make a decision that they're ready to start having sex?
Well, the main thing is to understand the way that relationships work, the ability to discern whether the person that they're dealing with is being honest up front, whether they are manipulative, whether they're being a bit shady about something. And if they've been unable to form any kind of relationships, they have no basis upon which to go.
They've been able to form it. Well, at 10 or 11 years old, I mean, please give me some numbers. What's this age range that you're speaking of, or that you're personally attracted to? That'd probably be a better piece of information for me. What's the age range that you are personally attracted to?
Personally, between 7 and 11.
Between
7 years old and 11 years old.
Young girls between 7 and 11
That's right.
are what you are attracted to.
Yes.
What about a 7 to 11-year-old girl attracts you?
What about it?
What about them?
Many things. I mean, aesthetically, I just think they're beautiful. Everything about them. On an emotional level or on a philosophical level, I enjoy the way they see the world without all the conditioning that is received later in life. When they look at something, they see it as it is, not as they've been taught to see it, or as somebody has encouraged them to see it. So it's a fantastic thing to enjoy the wonder that they experience the world, and to relive things as they actually are, and not as one has been taught.